says, what do you usually think when you hear a recording of yours? I don't listen to recordings of myself, and only when I record it, and I have to listen to the playbacks and pick which take I would like if there are more than one take. And I listen to it and I learn a lot from it, and I check it out, and then, I'm not really listening to the recording after that. It's when I hear it, I thought, yeah, this is a moment in time, and I appreciate what it is and try to keep a positive mental attitude and go from there. You puff your cheeks while playing. Why do you do this? Is it in order to put more pressure in the mouthpiece? I think one of the reasons I've always puffed this cheek, I don't know why, I cannot puff it, but when I puff it, it kind of releases the pressure here and it makes it even looser. I'm not telling people to puff their cheeks. That's just what happens to me. Questions? The meter's running.
I want to go back to this comment once more. So, if you've got a rhythm section, you want them to play, changing, doing alterations to the chords and all that. That's interference. Would that be considered interference in your mind?
Well, what do you mean by changing the alterations of the chords?
Well, I meant changing or altering. I didn't mean changing the alterations.
Okay. It depends on the tune. If I'm playing a tune like How Deep is the Ocean or something like that, and I hear piano players just kind of go, and he's just playing like that, keep it out of my way, just simple. But if I used to hear him start going like, and he's taking it in another place, sometimes that's what I want. It depends. If he decides, okay, I'm going to play all the changes down a half step, that might be inappropriate. So
I understand there's context.
Yeah, it's total context. It's whatever's going to make me sound good, that's what I want him to do. Sometimes it's playing, and sometimes, man, you need a downbeat every once in a while. I mean, sometimes you play with a player and they never give you a downbeat. It's like, yeah, it's like Houdini, and that's cool. But every once in a while, there's nothing wrong with a downbeat. Yes.
This is the live playing. I want to emulate it. I sometimes, for my practice, I feel like sometimes
Yeah, think rhythms. Yeah, practice rhythms. Just practice rhythms, because you won't be able to play any of your patterns. Or get your patterns and rhythmize them. I could take a little pattern, like, for example, take a 4-note pattern. Say this, like something simple like, I'm going down the whole steps with that. Or I could go down to half steps or minor thirds or major thirds, whatever. I'm going to take a 3-note, a rhythm that's in 3 notes or 5 notes and 7 notes. It's going to totally mess with that. So if I take 3 notes, it could be totally mess with it. 5 notes. Seven. I've totally changed it. Or going up. So I'm messing with it rhythmically. So I'm thinking rhythm. I'm thinking, I have a rhythm class, and I have them transcribe the rhythms to solos and write their own notes in there. It's amazing how great they sound. You know, it always surprises me that it would sound that good. Even like sparse solos, like a Miles Davis solo, that he's only playing a couple notes, and you write your own notes in and play them, because it's where he comes in, where he goes over the bar line and he comes in on beat 4, you know, and plays that note, and it's revealing. Any other questions? Por favor. Yes.
As far as like the extreme registers of the horn, is there certain like players that you try to emulate, or certain ways of practicing, trying to get that into your soloing? You know, playing in the extreme high register and the extreme low register.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to emulate all the players I listen to. You know, I mean, when I hear people do that, like the younger generation plays in the altissimo, I mean, I don't think that older generations would have thought that was possible. And if they did, they probably wouldn't have been into it, because they made their living in the low register. You know, they had such a great low register, you know, on a tenor saxophone. Man, there's nothing better than the low register of that instrument. And then you hear modern guys, they hardly ever go down there. And when they do, it's not a subtone. It's kind of just that, I don't know how you describe it, just a regular tone, I guess. You know, and I think one of the reasons why people use altissimo even more and more and more, because they can hear themselves better. You know, it cuts through. Like an alto, you don't ever have a problem hearing the alto cut through. And I read something that Coltrane played soprano because he couldn't hear the low register of the tenor anymore, or he didn't have the impact there. I don't know if that's true or not. I guess we'll never know, well, until somebody who knows Train can tell us. But yeah, I listen to the younger players and I say, wow, that's incredible. Like, listen to that altissimo. I remember hearing a player, I think he played with Stan Kenton, Sam Donahue. He played a lot of high notes on the tenor, and when I heard that, I said, wow. But what really got me is I had a student once from Germany. His name was Karsten, and I can't remember his last name. But he would come to his lesson every week, and he would never do his lesson. He would just say, hey, man, I want you to check out my high notes. And he played Donnelly on the alto an octave above at regular tempo, like he didn't miss a note. When he did that, my altissimo from that point on was 300% better, because he just broke every mental barrier that I had, and I had a lot of them. My favorite players didn't play up there. And if they did, it was kind of, they throated it. They didn't really, like Train, you know, he would throat those notes up there and growl and get those notes to, or sometimes you hear Sonny play a note up there, or Dexter would play a hot lick that had a high C in there or something, you know, and a B-flat blues. But these guys, they completely broke my barriers. I just, from that point on, without even practicing, I became better at it, because I didn't think it was possible. Then I realized, hey, they can do it, it's possible. Yes?
For purposes of vocabulary building, do you recommend generally that someone identify a single player whose vocabulary they would like to try and build, or instead of that, just find individual solos, regardless of who they were by, that you happen to really like? Is there a way to answer that? Or do you ultimately want to do them both?
You know, I think if you had X amount of time, you had 2 years to get a great vocabulary together. You could spend those 2 years with one person, if the person had an extensive vocabulary, or you could spend it doing several plays. And I think you probably end up in a similar place. Maybe, however, though, if you had a few players, you'd have a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, you could have a little bit more perspective, that's the word I'm looking for, on what good vocabulary is. you know, because you have players who play the same lines like all the time, and the way it sounds, you don't want him to play any other lines. It sounds that great, like Grant Green on guitar. I mean, he sounds so amazing just playing with the lines he plays. I don't care if he plays the same thing over and over again. Or for that matter, Dexter, a lot of times, will play the same lines, and you hear it say, man, yeah. And then you hear Lee Konitz play, and he never plays the same line once. You know? So, whatever you like, whatever turns you on as a player.
I tend to find it useful also to build your vocabulary through players of instruments other than your own.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I mean, the bebop guys, they're all playing the bebop language. You know, they play the same lines and similar articulation. Like the piano player would be having the same phrasing as the saxophone. And yes.
Can you describe like your daily practice routine or like your weekly practice routine? Like how do you get all your what?
Well,
do you do?
on a day that I have time to practice, like I teach 2 marathon days a week, where I'm teaching nonstop all day. So my practicing is just playing with students, and for the most part I'm playing drums or piano, but mostly drums. But when I'm home and I have, and I get my day in front of me, I have an attic where it's a pretty good sized attic, and I do my practicing up there. It's like my little laboratory, and I sit down, I play the drums for an hour. But I know what I'm practicing. I mean, it's like I'm working on these particular things, and then I'll just play. Then I'll practice the saxophone, and I might go down, eat a little bit, and I'll come back up and do the same thing. And I have an hourglass, and it's exactly 1 hour. And I put the hourglass on, and I play the drums for exactly that. When the hourglass is done, I don't care if I'm in the middle of whatever, I get up. And the same thing is true with the saxophone. When it's done, it's done. That way, I kind of, it makes me organize my stuff different way. I kind of keep, because I could just go forever and get lost in the attic, you know. My wife will say, man, you've been up there all day long for 8 hours. What's up with you? This is why I kind of keep organized, you know. Yes.
Why do you practice that?
I have fun.
That works out.
Yeah, that's why I practice the saxophone. I have fun. That's the only reason I practice it. Yeah.
What do you think about the evolution of drumming? Modern.
Oh man, it's totally changed the way people play. Like my favorite musician when I was a kid, I keep talking about saxophone players, but I would go to Harvard Square, where I grew up in Watertown, and I'd take a little bus ride to Harvard Square once a week, and there was this place called Briggs & Briggs that had 3 listening booths. So you could get a whole pile of records, well, I say pile, 4 or 5 of them, and go into the listening booth and listen to them, and then decide which one you'd like to buy. And they cool with me, because I'd always buy at least 1, sometimes 2. And every record that had Elvin on, I bought. Elvin Jones, that is. If it was a Wayne Shorter record, or a Joe Henderson record, or a Grant Green record, or a Larry Young record, or I bought every one that Elvin was on. I just adored the way he played, and somehow I just loved listening to that kind of thing, and grew to love this drummer. All the older cats like Philly Joe and Billy Higgins, and then of course the more modern guys like Tony Williams and Jack DeJohnette, and now the younger guys like Billy Stewart, and all the guys, and their effect on the melodic instruments. I call it the trickle-down effect. Even though it doesn't work in politics or with economy, it does work in music. The trickle-down effect of rhythm, of drummers, and how they influence saxophone players. Yes.
I knew you were going to say Alvin. What did you think of Brecker's drumming? I hear he was a pretty good drummer.
Yeah, he was. He was a great drummer. Yeah, Mike, we'd practiced together, and he lived on, was it 17th and 19th Street, and I lived on 28th. And he was fantastic on drums. Yeah. But yeah, all tenor players, a lot of tenor players play drums.
I'm buying my first set now.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you had to really compare yourself as a drummer, like who do you say you really sound like?
Oh, I'm a terrible drummer. But that's not the point. The point, I'm having more fun than any of the guys. That's the point.
I can mention being a drummer, you have the guy in front sound good.
That's right. I'm trying to make the drummer sound good. Well, there's that great story about Monk. This bass player, I forget who it was, is playing the gig with Monk that evening, and he says, Monk, he said, how do you want me to play tonight? He looks at him and goes, make the drummer sound good. Oh, I love this one even more. This is a Steve Swallow story. Steve is Monk's bass player, I forget who it was sick. So Steve Swallow's doing the gig with Monk that night. He sees him in the afternoon, I think it was at Newport, and he said, Monk, he said, I'm the bass player who's doing the gig for you, subbing. He said, you have any of the music for the gig tonight? And Monk looked at him and said, you don't want to cheat, do you? There's a question here of, is there a specific method you teach for developing technical facility? And, having the right embouchure for sure, blowing air through the horn, and, playing scale sequences, those, and you practice them every day religiously. Scales, of course, every day, the different, harmonic minor, melodic minor, arpeggios, and then just playing lines, playing melodies, bebop lines, and playing them in all keys, and trying to get like your facility up on that. But it's a thing where you can't just do it 8 hours one day and not do it for the rest of the week, and you just do it every day, and you don't look at it, it just builds by itself.